Today we are going to share a story that will leave you speechless. Rosalind Devereaux, a Salt Lake City lawyer, had a near-death experience and came back with a powerful message and a crucial warning about events that will unfold in October 2024. Be sure to watch until the end to find out what she saw. And before we start, tell us which city you're watching this video from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our incredible stories. Hello. My name is Rosalind Devereaux. I never imagined I would be here sharing such a personal and, well, unbelievable story. But after what I experienced, I feel I need to tell you. You know when you go through something so intense that it's hard to keep it to yourself? That's more or less how I feel. Well, let me introduce myself properly. I'm an average woman in my 30s living in Salt Lake City. I've always been the reserved type, those who prefer to stay alone, enjoy a good book at home, or go out with a small group of friends. No spotlights or big adventures. My life has always been pretty normal. I work as an accountant in a local company. I have my routine, my hobbies. One of them, in fact, is ice skating. I've been doing this since I was a kid, and I've always felt super comfortable on the slopes. I've never been much of a believer in supernatural things or mystical experiences. To tell you the truth, I was quite skeptical about this kind of thing. Stories of people who said they had seen the light at the end of the tunnel or found dead relatives always seemed to me to be, at the very least, a figment of the imagination. I thought, it must be the brain playing tricks, right? But everything changed that Saturday afternoon in January. I was doing what I always did, skating with my friends, Caroline and Teresa. We've known each other for years, since college. They are like sisters to me. We planned to skate almost every weekend. It was our time to relax, laugh, gossip a little, forget about the week's problems. That day, the weather was cold, typical of January in Salt Lake City. I remember thinking it was a perfect day to be on the track. If someone had told me that morning that my life would completely change in a matter of hours, I probably would have laughed. But it's funny how fate works, isn't it? We never know what is waiting just around the corner, or in my case, on a lap around the ice rink. What happened that day, and in the moments that followed, made me question everything I believed about life, death, and what lies beyond. It was an experience that affected me in ways I could never have imagined. And that's the story I want to share with you now. Not to convince anyone or prove something, but because I feel it's important. Maybe someone out there needs to hear this as much as I needed to experience it. So if you are there, taking the time to listen to me, I thank you. I'll try to tell everything as clearly as possible, even if some parts seem, hard to believe. I only ask that you listen with an open heart. Sometimes the most incredible things in life are the ones that defy our logic. And believe me, what I experienced that day challenged everything I thought I knew about the world. So, let me tell you how it all started that Saturday. It was an ordinary January day, one of the really cold ones we have here in Salt Lake City. I had arranged to meet Caroline and Teresa at the skating rink, as we did almost every weekend. It was our tradition, our way of relaxing after a whole week of work. I arrived at the track a little before them. I remember smelling that characteristic smell of ice, mixed with the aroma of hot chocolate coming from the cafeteria. I put on my skates, the ones I had had for years and considered almost like a good luck charm. Little did I know that day luck would play quite a trick on me. When the girls arrived, we started skating, talking about the week's news, laughing at the inside jokes that only we understood. The ice was perfect that day, smooth as a mirror. I felt so at ease, so in control. You know when you've been doing something for so long that it becomes almost instinctive. That's how I felt skating. We were there for about 40 minutes, I think. Caroline had just told a hilarious story about her new coworker, and I was laughing so hard I was barely paying attention along the way. It was at that moment that it happened. My skate hit a jagged part of the ice. It must have been a place where someone had shaved too much, These little things that we don't normally notice. 1 second I was gliding smoothly. The next I felt my balance slipping away. I tried to hold back, I swear I tried. But it all happened so fast. I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm going to fall. And the next moment I felt my body falling backwards. The impact was brutal. My head hit the ice with a force I had never felt before. You know that pain that's so intense you can't even scream? It was exactly like that. For a moment, I literally saw stars. Then everything went dark. I heard screams in the distance. I think it was Caroline and Teresa calling my name, but it sounded like they were far, far away. The last thing I remember thinking was, why is everything so quiet? And then, nothing. Complete silence. What happened next? Well, that's the hardest part to explain. It's also the part that changed everything for me. In a moment I was there, lying on the ice, feeling the most intense pain of my life. The next, I was somewhere else. No, it wasn't the sky like we imagine in the movies, with clouds and angels playing harps. It was something completely different. But before I get into that part, I want you to understand one thing. I was clinically dead for 8 minutes. 8 minutes. The doctors told me later that it was a miracle that I survived without any after effects. But to me, those 8 minutes seemed like an eternity. And what I experienced during that time, well, that's what I'm going to tell you now. I just want you to know that I understand if this sounds crazy. Believe me, I would doubt it myself if someone told me something like that before. But after living what I experienced, I no longer have any doubts. There is much more between heaven and earth than we imagine. And I had the chance to see a little of this, much more. Well, now comes the hardest part to explain. How do you describe something that goes beyond everything we know, you know? But I'll try. After everything went dark, I expected to feel scared, panic maybe. But it wasn't like that at all. Suddenly, I felt light, as if all the weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders. And then, I opened my eyes. But they weren't my physical eyes, you know? It was something different. I was floating above my own body. I could see everything down there. Me, lying on the ice. Caroline and Teresa screaming for help. People around panicking. It was like watching a movie, except I was the protagonist lying there. The strange thing is that I wasn't afraid. None. On the contrary, I was filled with a sense of peace that I had never experienced before. It was as if every problem, every worry I'd ever had in my life had just evaporated. I tried to talk to my friends, tell them everything was fine, but no sound came out. That's when it hit me. I wasn't there the way I used to be. It was like I was pure consciousness, you know? No body, no voice, but completely aware of everything. And then, things started to change around me. The chaos of the skating rink slowly disappeared. The sounds became more distant, as if someone was turning down the volume on a TV. The cold artificial light of the track was being replaced by something more alive. Suddenly, I was no longer on the ice rink. He was in a huge, lush green field. The sun was shining, but it wasn't that strong sun that hurts your eyes, you know? It was a soft, welcoming light. I could feel the grass beneath my feet, yes. Somehow I had feet again, but they weren't physical feet as we know them. The air there, how can I explain it? It was like breathing pure energy. Each breath filled me with a vitality I had never felt before. The colors were more vivid than anything I've ever seen on Earth. You know when you see an HD photo for the first time and think, wow, how sharp. It was like that, only 1,000 times more intense. In the distance, I saw mountains that shone with a light of their own. The sky was such a deep blue that it seemed endless. And the most incredible thing, I could feel it all, not just see or hear, but feel with every part of my being. The flowers around me gave off fragrances that brought back memories. They weren't familiar smells, but somehow they reminded me of happy moments in my life. My grandmother's perfume, the smell of cake coming out of the oven at my mother's house, the aroma of new books, all mixed into a fragrance impossible to describe. I felt at home. More than that, I felt part of it all, as if every cell of my being was connected to that place. It was familiar and new at the same time. You know that feeling of déjà vu? It was similar, only 1,000 times more intense. It was at that moment that I realized this was not a hallucination. It wasn't my brain playing tricks because of the hit. It was real. More real than anything I had ever experienced. And something inside me knew there was still more to see, more to experience. I wanted to explore, understand that place better, and, as if responding to my desire, I felt a presence beside me. It wasn't someone I could see clearly, but I knew it was there. A loving, welcoming presence. That's when I realized my journey was just beginning. What I saw and felt afterwards, well, it's hard to put into words, but I'll try. Because what happened next completely changed my understanding of life, death, and what really matters. As I took in all the beauty around me, something caught my eye. In the distance, I saw a kind of curtain made of light. It wasn't an ordinary light, you know. It was as if millions of tiny bright dots were dancing in the air, forming this curtain. I felt an irresistible urge to touch it. It was as if something inside me knew there was something important there. When I approached and touched one of those points of light, it was as if a movie started playing in front of me. But it wasn't just a movie I watched. I was there again. Suddenly, I was a 7-year-old girl, trying to ride a bike for the first time. I could feel the wind on my face and the fear of falling, the emotion of being able to balance myself. But the amazing thing is that I wasn't just reliving my own experience. I could feel the emotions of my father, who was there helping me. I felt his pride, his love, his concern. It was as if, for a moment, I was him and me at the same time. I could understand how much that moment meant to him, how happy he was to be sharing this with me, but also worried about seeing me grow up so quickly. When the memory ended, I was back on the field. But now I understood. Each point of light was a memory, not just my memories, but the memories of everyone who was part of my life. I touched another point of light. This time, I found myself a teenager, consoling a friend who had ended a relationship. I remember thinking at the time that I didn't know what to say, that maybe I wasn't helping much. But now, reliving that moment, I could feel how much my presence meant to her, how my words, which I thought were so inadequate, actually brought comfort and hope. That's when I realized every little act of kindness, every moment of connection with someone, it all had a much bigger impact than I ever imagined. I saw moments that I no longer remembered, a smile for a stranger on the street, a kind word for the supermarket cashier, and I could feel how these small gestures affected people. As I explored these memories, I felt a presence beside me. When I turned around, I saw isn't quite the right word. It was more like feeling. It was a being made of pure light. It didn't have a human form. It was more like concentrated energy. This being of light, it's difficult to describe, you know? It wasn't like seeing a person. It was more like feeling an incredibly loving and wise presence. He didn't speak with words, but somehow I understood everything he wanted to show me. Without saying anything, the being of light made me understand that there was more for me to discover. It was as if he was saying, "Come with me, I have something important to show you." And so, we began an incredible journey. Together, I don't know if the right word is float or fly, but we moved through landscapes that seemed straight out of a dream. We passed endless fields of flowers that I had never seen before, with colors so vivid they almost hurt my eyes. We flew over forests where each tree seemed to pulse with its own life. In a moment, we were over an ocean, but it was no ordinary ocean. The water sparkled as if millions of stars were swimming in it. When I looked closer, I realized that each star was actually a little life, a consciousness. It was as if I could see the soul of every sea creature. Throughout this journey, I felt a deep connection to everything around me. It wasn't just me observing these incredible things. I was part of them. Every flower, every tree, every drop of water, I could feel that we were all connected in some way. The being of light showed me how every action, every thought, Every emotion we have affects everything else. It was like seeing a giant web where each thread represented a life, and everyone was interconnected. I remember thinking, how come I never realized this before? How could I live this long without understanding this connection? And the being of light somehow made me understand that this was precisely the lesson. That on Earth, sometimes, we forget this connection, but it is always there. At one point on our journey, we stopped at a place that looked like the top of a mountain. From there, I could see, well, everything. The entire universe opened before me. Galaxies, stars, planets. Everything seemed so close and so vast at the same time. It was there that the being of light showed me something that completely changed my perception of life and death. He made me understand that death, as we know it, is not an end. It's just a transition. I saw how our souls, or consciousnesses, or whatever name we want to give them, continue to exist beyond the physical body. But the most incredible thing was realizing that time, as we know it on Earth, did not exist there. Past, present, and future. Everything happened at the same time. It was as if I could see the entire history of the universe unfolding before me. Not in a straight line, but like a complex tapestry where each moment was connected to every other. And do you know what impressed me most? The love. It sounds cliché, I know. But there, at that moment, I understood that love is not just a feeling. It is the most powerful force in the universe. It's what keeps everything connected. It's what gives meaning to all this vastness. As I watched all of this, I felt a peace so deep, so complete. It's hard to explain. It was as if all the worries, all the fears I had ever had in my life just didn't make sense anymore. I felt part of something much bigger, something so beautiful and perfect that it almost hurt. The being of light showed me that every life, every experience we have on Earth has a purpose, not in the sense of a predetermined destiny, but as opportunities for growth, learning, connection. I remember thinking, how am I going to remember all this when I get back? How am I going to explain it to people? And the being of light, somehow, made me understand that the important thing was not to remember every detail, but to carry with me the essence of what I learned. At that moment, I didn't want to go back. I wanted to stay there forever, immersed in that peace, in that deep understanding. But something inside me knew it wasn't my time yet, that I had more to do, more to live on Earth. And it was then that something unexpected happened, something that made me understand that my journey was far from over. While I was still absorbing everything the being of light had shown me, the landscape around me began to change again. The vast universe I was observing began to dissolve, as if it were made of tiny particles of light. It was then that I saw, well, saw isn't quite the right word. It was more like feeling a presence. An angel appeared before me. It wasn't like the angels we see in paintings, you know? No white wings or harps. It was an energy so intense, so bright, that it almost hurt to look at it directly. This angel had a different aura from the being of light that had guided me there. It was as if he carried an urgency, an intensity that I hadn't felt before. Without using words, he began to give me a message. And let me tell you, it was the most surreal part of this entire experience. The angel showed me visions of the future. They weren't clear images. They were more like flashes, sensations. He made me understand that something of extreme importance was about to happen on Earth, something that would change the course of humanity. The dates stuck in my mind. October 19th to 22, 2024. The angel didn't show me exactly what would happen, but he made me feel the magnitude of the events. It was as if I could feel the impact these days would have on every person on the planet. It wasn't scary, in the sense of being a catastrophe or anything like that. It was more like an awakening, as if humanity was about to take an evolutionary leap, you know? But the angel made it clear that people would need to be prepared, not physically, but spiritually and emotionally. He showed me that these days would mark the beginning of a new era for humanity, an era of greater consciousness, of greater connection with the universe and with each other. But it also made me understand that this transition wouldn't be easy for everyone. that many people would feel lost, confused, scared by the changes. The angel made me feel like I had a role in all of this, not a role of leader or prophet, nothing that grand, but that my experience, what I was living at that moment, could help other people to better understand what was to come. I remember thinking, but who is going to believe me? How am I going to explain something that I don't even fully understand myself? And the angel, somehow, gave me a feeling of calm, as if to say that I didn't need to worry about it now, that when the time came I would know what to do. The angel also showed me that these changes would not happen overnight, that the days in October would be just the beginning of a much larger process, that in the following years, humanity would undergo profound transformations in the way we see the world, how we relate to each other and the planet. I confess that I was a little scared by all of this. It was a lot of responsibility, but at the same time I felt immense hope, a certainty that, despite the challenges, we were heading towards something incredible. Before disappearing, the angel left me with one last message. They were not words, but a strong feeling that love would be the key to going through this period of change. That the more people connected with true love, not just romantic love, but universal love, the love for life, for nature, for everything that exists, the easier the transition would be. And then, as quickly as he appeared, the angel was gone. I lay there, floating in what felt like empty space, trying to process everything I had just experienced. It was as if my mind was expanded to the maximum, trying to contain information that went far beyond my human understanding. It was at that moment that I felt, for the first time since I had left my body, a certain restlessness, a feeling that there was something I needed to do, that my time there was coming to an end. And that's when I started to feel a force pulling me back to my body, back to the life I knew. Part of me wanted to resist, wanted to stay in that place of peace and understanding, but I knew deep down that it wasn't my time to stay yet. Little by little, all that light, all that vastness began to dissipate. The last thing I felt was the loving touch of the being of light who had guided me throughout this journey. And then darkness. Returning to my body was, well, it was intense. In a moment I was in that place of light, peace and universal understanding. The next, I felt like I was being sucked into a dark tunnel at high speed. The first feeling was cold, a biting cold that seemed to penetrate every cell in my body. Then came the pain. My God, the pain. It was as if every nerve was screaming at the same time. My head was throbbing in a way I had never experienced before. I slowly opened my eyes, and the light seemed blinding. I was back at the skating rink, lying on the ice. There was a circle of people around me, worried faces I could barely make out. I heard distant voices as if they were talking underwater. "She's awake. Call the ambulance. Rosalind, can you hear me? Stay awake, okay?" I recognized Caroline's voice. I wanted to tell her that everything was fine, that I had seen incredible things, but my mouth wouldn't obey. All I got was a weak moan. Little by little, my vision became clearer. I saw paramedics approaching, checking my vitals. I heard medical terms that I didn't fully understand. Cardiac arrest, successful resuscitation, possible head trauma. As I was placed on a stretcher, I tried to collect my thoughts. How long had I been out? It felt like it had been an eternity. That whole journey, the things I saw and felt. How could all of this have happened in such a short time? On the way to the hospital, inside the ambulance, I fluctuated between consciousness and unconsciousness. Every time I closed my eyes, flashes of what I had experienced appeared in my mind. The green field, the being of light, the angel, the visions of the future. Had it been real? Or was it just my brain creating hallucinations because of the fall? Arriving at the hospital, I was taken straight to the emergency room. Tests, more tests, doctors asking questions. I wanted to tell them what had happened, but something told me to wait, that they wouldn't understand, that they would think I was delusional because of the accident. Hours later, When I was finally alone in the hospital room, I was able to reflect on everything. The doctor had told me I had been clinically dead for 8 minutes. 8 minutes. How was it possible that I had lived so much in just 8 minutes? In the days that followed, as I recovered in the hospital, I tried several times to tell Caroline and Teresa about my experience. But every time it started, I saw the look of concern in their eyes. They thought I was confused because of the concussion. "It's normal to have strange dreams after a trauma like this," Caroline said, trying to comfort me. "When you're more recovered, you'll see that it was just your mind playing tricks." But I knew that wasn't it. What I had experienced was too real, too deep to be just a dream or hallucination. The feeling of peace, the understanding of the universe, the warning about the future, all of this was engraved in my soul in a way that I couldn't explain. When I was finally released from the hospital a few weeks later, I was different. Not just physically. The scar on my head would be a constant reminder of the accident. But internally, my way of seeing the world, of understanding life and death, had completely changed. The fear of death, which previously tormented me from time to time, had completely disappeared. I knew now that death was not an end, but just a transition, a passage to something much bigger and more beautiful than we can imagine. But with this peace came a responsibility. The angel's warning about the events of October 2024 weighed on my mind. How could I prepare people for something that I didn't even fully understand myself? In the months that followed, as I returned to my normal routine, that question wouldn't leave my mind. I knew I had a mission, but I didn't know exactly how to accomplish it. All I knew was that my life would never be the same after that afternoon of ice skating. Returning to normal life after such an experience? Well, it wasn't easy, not at all. The first few days at home were strange, you know. Everything looked the same, but at the same time everything was different. Or rather, I was different. The things that once seemed so important, the stresses of work, the little irritations of everyday life, now seemed so insignificant. I caught myself looking at people on the street, in the market, and thinking, if you only knew what I know now. My family and friends were worried, of course. They thought I was depressed or traumatized by the accident. My mother was calling me all the time, asking if I was eating right, if I needed help with anything. Caroline and Teresa started making surprise visits, as if they were checking to see if I hadn't gone completely crazy. I understood their concern, but it was frustrating not being able to fully share what I was feeling. Every time I tried to talk about my experience, I saw that look in their eyes. That poor thing, she's still confused about the blow to the head. Look, at work, things were also different. Before, I was super focused, always chasing deadlines and goals. Now, I found myself looking out the window, thinking about the vastness of the universe I had glimpsed. The numbers on my spreadsheet seemed so small compared to everything I had seen. My boss even called me in for a talk. He was concerned about my performance. I tried to explain that I was just readapting, that I would soon be back to normal. But the truth is, I didn't want to go back to normal. Not after what he had experienced. The nights were the worst. I lay in bed and went over every detail of my experience. The green field, the being of light, the memories I revisited, the angel's warning. Everything seemed so vivid, so real, but at the same time, so far from the reality of my daily life. And there was the warning, of course. Those dates, October 19th to 22nd, 2024, wouldn't leave my head. I found myself counting the days, the months that were left. What would happen? How could I prepare people? Who would believe me if I tried to warn? I started looking for information about near-death experiences. I read books, scientific articles, reports from other people who went through something similar. It was comforting to discover that I wasn't alone, that other people had experienced similar things. But no reports mentioned a specific warning about the future like the one I received. I tried meditating, seeking to reconnect with that sense of peace and understanding I felt during my experience. Sometimes I could catch a glimpse of that feeling, but never as intense as what I experienced that day. The months passed, and little by little, I found a new balance. She was no longer the Rosalind she used to be, that was clear. But he wasn't a completely different person either. It was as if I had gained a new layer of understanding, a new perspective on life. I started to appreciate the little things more. A sunset, the smile of a stranger on the street, the smell of coffee in the morning. Everything seemed charged with a deeper meaning now. I knew that every moment, no matter how trivial it seemed, was part of something much bigger. My relationship with people has also changed. I became more patient, more understanding. I could see beyond appearances, understand that each person was fighting their own battles, living their own journey. That vision of the interconnectedness of all things that I had during my experience translated into a deeper empathy in my daily life. Little by little, some people close to me began to notice this change in me. I was no longer receiving looks of concern, but of curiosity. "There's something different about you, Rosalind," my sister said to me one day. "You seem more at peace." It was at that moment that I realized maybe I didn't need to explicitly talk about my experience to fulfill the mission I felt I had been given. Perhaps the best way to prepare people for the changes that were to come was through example, living according to what I learned, sharing that universal love that I felt so intensely. Of course, the warning about October 2024 still weighed on my mind, but now I understood that my role was not to be a prophet of the apocalypse. It was about being a beacon, a person who could offer a little light and understanding in times of change and uncertainty. And so, day after day, I learned to live in this new normal, carrying with me the lessons of my experience, but also open to learning more, to growing more. After all, if there was one thing I had learned, it was that life, and what comes after it, is much more vast and wonderful than we could ever imagine. As the months passed and 2024 approached, I began to feel a growing urgency. It wasn't just anxiety about what might happen, but a need to do something, to prepare myself in some way. I decided I needed to find a balance between keeping my experience private and still helping those around me. I started small, I started to practice kindness more in my daily life. A smile here, a word of encouragement there. Simple things that, I now knew, could have a much greater impact than we imagined. I also started to get more involved in volunteer work. I started dedicating some weekends to help at a local shelter. Seeing the direct impact that small acts of kindness could have on people's lives constantly reminded me of the interconnectedness I had experienced during my NDE. At work, I surprised everyone when I asked to lead a social responsibility project for the company. Before, I was known for being focused only on numbers and results. Now he was proposing initiatives to make our community a better place. My boss was impressed with my change in attitude and was fully supportive. I started practicing meditation daily, trying to reconnect with that sense of peace and understanding I experienced. It wasn't the same, of course, but it helped me stay focused on what really mattered. As 2024 approached, I noticed that more and more people seemed to be searching for something different. It was as if there was an uneasiness in the air, a collective feeling that something was about to change. It made me think that maybe, in some way, other people were also feeling that times of transformation were coming. I decided to start a small discussion group. Nothing formal, just some friends and acquaintances who met once a week to talk about life, purpose, spirituality. I didn't mention my experience directly, but I used what I learned to guide our conversations. It was surprising to see how open and eager people were for this kind of dialogue. As October 2024 approached, I intensified my efforts. I organized a weekend retreat with my discussion group. We focus on themes such as connection, compassion, and emotional resilience. I didn't talk explicitly about what was coming, but I tried to prepare people as best I could. I also started writing. Not a book or something public, but a diary. I put on paper everything I remembered about my experience, my thoughts, my reflections on how it had changed my life. I thought that if something really significant happened in October, maybe this record would be useful to someone in the future. As the dates approached, October 19th to 22nd, I admit I got nervous. Part of me still wondered if it was all just a hallucination caused by the trauma. What if nothing happened? What if I was wrong about everything? But another part of me, the part that had experienced that deep connection with the universe, knew something was coming. It might not be something dramatic or apocalyptic, but I felt like it would be days of significant change. The week before the dates, I decided to take a few days off from work. I told my family I needed time alone to recharge. In fact, I wanted to be completely present and aware of whatever was going to happen. I rented a small cabin in the mountains, not far from the city. A peaceful place where I could meditate, reflect, and, if necessary, be available to help in any way. On the eve of the 19th Bang, sitting on the porch of the cabin, looking at the starry sky, I felt strangely calm. Regardless of what happened in the next few days, I knew I had done the best I could to prepare myself, and to help others prepare as well. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and allowed myself to feel that connection with everything around me again. Whatever the future held, I was ready to face it. Here I am, on the eve of what may be the most significant event in recent human history, and all I can think is, am I really prepared for this? It's funny, you know? After everything I've experienced, after all the preparation, I still feel like that Rosalind who was about to fall onto the ice rink. Anxious, a little scared, but also excited. Yeah, I think that's the word. Looking back at everything that has happened since my near-death experience, it's hard to believe we've made it this far. There were moments when I doubted everything, when I thought maybe I had imagined it all. But now, sitting here in this cabin in the mountains, with October 19th, 2024 about to dawn, I feel a deep certainty that something is really about to happen. I don't know exactly what to expect. The angel didn't give me specific details, just the feeling that it would be something transformative. Will we see some grand event, visible to everyone? Or will it be something more subtle, a shift in humanity's collective consciousness? Part of me wants to turn on the TV, stay connected to the internet, follow every news story in real time. But another part, the part that lived that incredible experience beyond life, knows that I need to be centered, connected to something bigger than the headlines of the moment. So here I am, meditating, reflecting, internally preparing myself for whatever comes. I think about all the people I've met over the past few months, in my discussion group, the volunteers at the shelter. I hope the work we've done, the conversations we've had, have in some way prepared you for what's to come. I remember what the being of light showed me about the interconnectedness of all things. Perhaps this is what we are about to experience on a larger scale. Perhaps we are on the verge of a collective awakening, a moment when humanity will finally realize that we are all part of something much bigger. I confess that there are times when fear tries to infiltrate. What if it's something catastrophic? What if I misinterpreted everything? But then I take a deep breath and remember that feeling of peace and love I experienced. Whatever is coming next, I know it is part of a bigger plan, something beautiful and meaningful. As the sun begins to rise over the horizon, marking the beginning of October 19th, I feel a mix of emotions. Anxiety, yes, but also hope. Hope that we are about to take an important step in our evolution as a species. May we become more compassionate, more connected, more aware of our role in the universe. I don't know what the next few days will bring. I don't know if I will see angels descending from heaven or if I will witness some seismic shift in the way we perceive reality. But I know that whatever it is, I will be here. Gift. Open. Ready to embrace whatever comes and do what you can to help others navigate these uncharted waters. As I write these final words in my journal, I feel a rush of gratitude. Gratitude for having had this incredible experience that changed my life. Grateful for having had the chance to prepare myself and help others prepare. Gratitude for being alive at this very significant moment in human history. And so, with a heart full of expectation and love, I prepare for whatever the next few days bring. Whatever it is, I know I'm not alone, that we are all, in some way, together on this incredible journey that is life, and what comes after it. The future is coming, and for the first time in my life, I am not afraid. I'm ready. We are ready. And now, All we can do is wait, observe, and above all, love. Because at the end of the day, this is what I learned on my journey beyond life. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, and it is with love that we will face whatever the future holds for us.